gamers, gals, non-binary pals. We're going to take a look at MBT's channel, who is my favorite way to pay for my gambling habits by using his content as my ad revenue. So we want to take a look at why do bad Yu-Gi-Oh cards exist. There's actually a really good heuristic study video that I am going to be drawing parallels to in regards to the existence of like bad cards and card design as a whole. And I want to see what MBT's thoughts are in regards to bad cards and what a bad card even is. So let's give it a watch. But first, this video is brought to you guys by Imperium Duelist. Imperium makes some of the best Yu-Gi-Oh accessories and apparel, full stop. In fact, I religiously used their cherubim oversleeves for over a year at one point. And speaking of accessories, we've come together to create the hoppin' around playmat. You're all my little drama frogs, and I wanted to create a piece of art that is actually some form of usable merch. It comes in two colors, monochrome and hot pink, which is my favorite color by the way, and I am in love with how they turned out, both the single and two-player variants. Pick up a playmat, be sure to use my code Stevie10 on all products for their site for a 10% off discount, and be sure to tag us when yours comes in.
What's up everybody, it's your boy Team Samurai X2! We're doing one of these, another video where I ramble at the camera and then Vlad just prunes it into something watchable. Now you all hated when I started the last one of these with a metaphor. The curtains are blue, am I right? So today I'm going to begin with a story. After a couple of years, the LGS near me is finally emerging from the other side of a financial disaster. When MetaZoo became extremely popular right after COVID, they went all the way in on the product. This decision almost cost them the store, and thankfully they've been able to bounce back. But it hasn't been easy. I've said it before, but LGSs often operate on razor-thin margins, and one bad business decision, like backing MetaZoo, can make every subsequent decision life or death.
I'm not even joking. When it came to one of my super duper old stores that I used to work at, I remember the owner bought like 10 cases of MetaZoo product, and by the time he sold the store 2 years later, like 1 or 2 years later, to a new owner, I don't even think a third of the MetaZoo product had even moved. It's so crazy how MetaZoo just existed as like this essentially NFT card game that came out during a time to capitalize on people's greed for the trading card game market because of like Logan Paul's Charizard and Ludwig's like 300,000 Pokemon box whatever, and it just tried to gobble up the market and just failed so badly. Like legitimately, chat, tell me one mechanic in MetaZoo. Don't cheat, don't go to Wikipedia, just in the comments or in chat right now, type any mechanic that you know off the top of your head when it comes to MetaZoo. I can guarantee you, nobody fucking knows. I don't even know if summoning creatures is a mechanic. It might be called like casting a critter or some shit like that.
Been burned by one card game, it took a lot for me to convince my LGS to even stock Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's not hard to see why. Even now, after they are emerging from financial turmoil, they are saddled with a significant amount of Yu-Gi-Oh! Product that takes up shelf space and cannot, under any circumstances, move. They were thrilled with the Rarity Collection, Phantom Nightmare, and Age of Overlord, but they expressed to me intense frustration with the Mako Tsunami pack, the Soul Burner pack, and the Valiant Smashers pack that still rot on their store shelves. These sets are rough. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a weird relationship with its official tournament stores. Sometimes they give them a functional money printer in terms of a set that is full of desirable cards, but sometimes they saddle them with cards that aren't worth the cardboard they're printed on. The decision, and it is a decision, to design, produce, and then ship bad sets is kind of baffling. But it's not until you start to interrogate the individual pieces of cardboard that make up these bad sets, bad cards, that you start to really appreciate how.
I'm not even joking. Joseph is like 100% correct in the idea where if you print a good set, you physically cannot even keep that shit on your shelves if you tried. I remember one of my LGSs got like 3 cases of Rarity Collection, which is like crazy because I mean this place isn't even in like an LGS. It's just like a restaurant that also happens to be a place where Yu-Gi-Oh people hang out. Within 1 hour of the store opening, when they got Rarity Collection they sold out. It was crazy. They tried to keep like maybe a case in the back just to give out as like pricing or whatever. There was so much demand and just people fighting over the scraps of quarter century secrets. People ended up just like being like to the owner, hey man, I'll pay you like above retail. Let me just fucking buy a box of Rarity Collection. It was insane. It was absurd. But when it comes to stuff like Battles of Legend, Monstrous Revenge, or like the 2023 Megatons, that's just rotting like a fucking dead pear.
That's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about bad cards. Mako's Water Crap, Soul Burner's Fire Crap, every card in Valiant Smashers not named Centurion that was immediately put into the bulk bin, and then 3 months later Centurion. In short, we're going to ask the question, Why do bad Yu-Gi-Oh cards exist? To begin with, and Farfa, you can just turn the video off now, let's talk a little bit about Magic the Gathering. So bad cards aren't unique to Yu-Gi-Oh! The granddaddy of all card games, Magic the Gathering, has packs filled with pack filler. I mean, obviously. In Magic the Gathering, that pack filler serves three specific purposes. The first is draft. Magic the Gathering packs have to be designed in such a way that they facilitate a kind of sealed play called draft format, in which individuals pass an open pack around, taking what they believe to be the most powerful card in it, until everyone has enough cards to build a sealed deck. If you play Yu-Gi-Oh! At all, Battle Pack Draft was kind of like this. Now, the existence of this format necessitates the existence of cards that are kind of mid. You can't just print bombs into a set, then it's completely undraftable. Everyone's going to look at each other for 7 turns until they drop a Gristlebrand. You have to pack the pack full of things like individual monsters that fill out a curve, conditional pieces of removal that are likely to come up in a lower powered environment, and even like bad utility lands. Now, I should mention, this justification for the inclusion of bad cards into Magic the Gathering boosters has gotten a little more sus in recent years. Magic has exploded outward into this disgusting hydra of content, and now there's like 15 different versions of each individual pack that you can open.
You can get the standard pack, the draft pack, which is just a bad version of a normal pack. You can get the collector booster pack, which I'm not even joking, is $40 fucking for one pack. You can get the bundles. You can get a jumpstart booster, which, spoiler alerts, I'm pretty sure the only reason jumpstart boosters exist is exclusively for money laundering, because outside of trying to pull like an anime alt art of a card, no one in their right mind has ever willingly bought a jumpstart booster,
which are designed for draft, and some of which are only bombs and special chocolatey shiny cards. And then I think they walked some of that back. I'm actually unclear as to the state of draft boosters right now. But you'll notice Yu-Gi-Oh! Has functionally no way to play sealed unless you count pre-release, a format that most OTSs don't even bother running, just hosting a constructed tournament for the prizes that a pre-release would give. So we'll have to check out some of the other excuses for the existence of bad cards. In Magic the Gathering, sometimes cards are bad for conditional reasons. There's like a billion different formats to play Magic. Unless you want to play in paper, then you probably should just have a commander deck. And each of those different formats has a different power level and a different requirement for what a card has to do in order to be considered playable. Take a card like Sylvan Primordial. In Gatecrash's standard environment, this card was terrible, obviously. It cost too much, the payoff is too low, but this card was banned in Commander for a significant amount of time because, well, it turns out if you can trigger its effect like 9 or 10 times, it's actually crazy. In Yu-Gi-Oh! We really only have the one format, so it's not really like you can evaluate a card on the basis of it being good in one specific format and not another, because there's only the one. I guess like Predaplant Ambulo Melodies is like really good in NR. Right.
Hey, do you know what a card that actually should be banned in an alternate format is? This fucker right here. Thousand Eyes Restrict. Deckmaster format. This is unironically probably the best deckmaster in the format in general. You never need to summon it. Your opponent basically can't ever kill you unless they're on a pure burn deck. And even if like the metagame shapes up to be like, oh, your opponent does play burn or like some sort of deck out thing, guess what? You can just play some sort of counter to that. Like Thousand Eyes Restrict as your deckmaster and Runic Stun. You literally can never lose. It's crazy. Anyways, please bring back deckmaster format. That format was kind of cool until we realized it was kind of shit, but you know.
One other reason that bad cards exist in Magic the Gathering, and that's as story beats. This is probably the justification for bad cards that I think translates the most effectively to Yu-Gi-Oh! In Magic the Gathering, sometimes you'll get like a 3-mana 3/3 that's a vanilla, but all that space on the card is used to tell a pretty compelling story. Maybe it's a poem or a passage or a conversation in flavor text. Maybe the art is super expressive, and because there's nothing else on the card, you focus on it. The equivalent in Yu-Gi-Oh! Would be those 30 or 40 unplayable branded cards that nonetheless fill in a ton of the gaps in the Ecclesia and Albaz storyline. I want to touch on one other justification that's frequently given for the existence of bad cards, and that comes from Hearthstone. Hearthstone is such a good game, man. Not only because it's recently celebrated its 10-year anniversary, and it remains the, I think, only consistently successful CCG. I don't know, maybe Shadowverse counts, but also because the person who developed it, Ben Brode, spent a ton of time explaining why he did the things he did. And one of the things that he did was explain why bad cards exist in a game that doesn't have a draft mode that works the same way a Magic the Gathering one does. He described bad cards as a learning experience for the player. For instance, if you see in the core set a 1/4 3-mana creature, day one you don't really have a good understanding as to whether that's a good card or not. But if you then see a 1/4 creature with Taunt in an expansion set, even as a brand new player, you can intuit that the 1/4 vanilla is less good than that other card. And then you start drawing conclusions. Well, if there's already a card that outclasses that card, then any cards that outclasses are probably bad as well. You start to build an internal sense of the stats and abilities that 3 mana should be getting you.
I remember the day that Goblins vs. Gnomes came out when Spider Tank became probably the most played common card in the entire format. Like, Spider Tank, like, I think like the most popular cards in that format were Dr. Boom and fucking Spider Tank. Like, Spider Tank, you looked at Spider Tank versus Silverback Patriarch, it wasn't even a fucking contest. Spider Tank, my fucking goat.
Of understanding is fundamental for your ability to evaluate cards in contexts like Arena, where that's like the major skill being tested. This is a really cool idea, but unfortunately I don't think it translates to Yu-Gi-Oh very well. The reason for that is that Yu-Gi-Oh cards are insanely complicated. There's almost no way a new player could determine if a card is good or bad based on a cursory glance. Show them a card like the Black Goat Laughs and ask them if this card is strong or not. A significant amount of people will tell you, of course it is. It's like a weird prohibition style effect that absolutely bodies certain decks. A certain other group of people will tell you, no, obviously not. This is a card that has to be activated after being set, and for that reason it competes with other auto-win trap cards that should be winning you the game on the spot. Unless you're playing a very specific deck, in which case the power of this card also relies contextually on the power of a deck like Labyrinth. And you know what's awesome? I couldn't even tell you which one of those people is correct. There are some scenarios in which Yu-Gi-Oh does a pretty good job of teaching players what's good and what's not. Frequently, a bannably strong effect will be found on a card that has an archetypal lock on it. The existence of the banned card should probably clue players in that this effect is so good that you might want to decide to play an archetypal deck that has access to that ability.
Spoiler alerts, Makonko's not even that good. I'm pretty sure you could just give Makonko like Pot of Greed, the equip spell, and it still wouldn't do anything. That poor deck, man. It was so good. And then it started playing Floodgates 07 to the worst deck to ever do it.
Outside of like straight up 1-to-1s, it's almost impossible to evaluate 2 individual cards, especially for new players. Which brings us back to Yu-Gi-Oh! So why do we print cards that are terrible? What was the purpose of releasing archetypes like Memento or Valmonica that no matter how much support we give them in subsequent sets will never generate a fan base excited to play them or any sort of relevant win condition? We've determined it isn't because of sealed play considerations like draft, because we don't have it. We've determined it isn't because there are considerations for other formats, because we don't have those. And we've determined that it isn't to teach new players what bad cards are, because they can't figure it out anyway. So why do they exist? Well, the cynical reason is that we print bad cards because the release schedule demands it. Because there has to be a new Yu-Gi-Oh set every X couple of months, regardless of if the metagame is in a good place or a bad place. And by releasing a bad set that has no impact on advanced format while the format is healthy, Konami can ensure they don't have to worry about anything game-breaking emerging in the next couple of months before they have to ship out another one.
I disagree with the idea where certain cards do not have a fan base. Like, there are 100% dog shit archetypes that exist that do have very dedicated fan bases or people who do enjoy playing the deck. Like, look at Ava and Memento, or one of my mods, fucking yugioh Pissboy and Speedroid. Like, these are objectively really bad decks that don't really need additional support, or like they really realistically can't be salvaged in the current form that they're in. They exist because, you know, Konami does want to try out new types of card design. Konami does want to create versions of cards that are at least somewhat experimental. Like, these cards are not always entirely for the competitive player. They may be for, in all honesty, the more casual player, the person who wants to play jank decks, the person who wants to play, like, you know, that sort of weird, cool build and show up to their locals. And even if they go 2-2, they got to do it with a deck that's, you know, super silly. But I think the main thing that most people have to realize that not everyone plays it exclusively to play a tier 0 deck. It's to play the game and have fun with a deck that they enjoy and to do relatively okay within a competitive environment. That's why a lot of people enjoy formats that are pretty wide. Think of the format that we had right before Snake Eye formats, where like 5 to 8 decks were all extremely viable. Like that was, in my opinion, one of the best formats that we had overall, just because of the breadth of options and the fact that any player could realistically go to a locals with a deck that they actually liked and do extremely well with. And I think that dismissing cards as just Lamau, they're bad and they're not cards that aren't competitively relevant, should not be printed type deal, or that sort of ideology, I think that's a sort of flawed, cynical way of looking at bad cards as a whole, in my opinion.
Rather than pack filler existing to facilitate playing a different game with the packs or teaching new players lessons from the cards included therein, they exist because the packs have to. And then those packs sit on LGS shelves until they give up. Truth be told, I don't think this system really works for anyone. It sucks for LGSs to have to stock packs that just do not move. It sucks for players to feel like any given set is like a coin flip as to whether it will absolutely change the meta in every conceivable way or make no impact whatsoever. And I can't imagine it's good for Konami either to just go to their investors every 6 months and be like, yeah, half our products didn't sell at all. Instead, I'd like to see any of the other approaches to bad cards implemented. Either print fewer cards so we can stop stuffing packs full of chaff, introduce a sealed mode so there's a reason for their inclusion, give us other formats so cards that are contextually powerful can be included, or include cards that are simple so that new players can determine if they are strong or not based on the cards that they already have. Anything but what we're doing now.
I have mixed feelings about this video. Again, you guys kind of heard my weird little rant earlier in regards to why bad cards do exist, but I think that MBT is kind of coming at this from a purely competitive player standpoint. And while I don't think he's 100% wrong in that capacity, I do think it comes from a very narrow point of view. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think bad cards should exist? Do you think that weird, silly archetypes are good for the game? And if not, like that Konami is stealing money out of your wallet every time you purchase a box of Egg off or something? Let me know in the comment section down below, and that's gonna be it.